Greetings to everyone. Today's topic for discussion is obsessive compulsive disorder, and my moderator is Dr. Satish Rao. Starting with the introduction, obsessive compulsive and related disorders, also known as OCRDs, constitute a new chapter in both DSM-5 and ICD classification. Previously, such disorders were mostly coming under anxiety disorders. However, now OCD related disorders have been grouped under a separate chapter. This grouping of disorders includes OCD, which is the most common one. Other than that, there are disorders such as body dysmorphic disorder, hoarding disorder, trichotillomania, which is hair pulling disorder, and also skin picking disorder. So today we'll be talking about OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. Starting with the introduction, obsessive compulsive disorder is the classical obsessive compulsive related disorder and the one on which most research has been done. Like many of the other OCRDs, it is characterized by repetitive, intrusive thoughts and repeated mental acts or behaviors in response to those thoughts. OCD was once thought to be psychodynamic thinking, but it is now a proven neuropsychiatric disorder as underlying pathophysiology has been understood to some extent. Whereas OCD was once considered rare, it is now known to be quite prevalent. Patients are often embarrassed by and ashamed of their symptoms, and so careful screening of this disease is required. Finally, whereas OCD was once considered very refractory to treatment, the introduction of specific pharmacotherapeutic and psychotherapeutic interventions has led to more favorable outcomes for many. So starting with the definition, OCD is characterized by presence of obsessions and or compulsions. Obsessions are intrusive and unwanted repetitive thoughts, urges, or impulses that often lead to a marked increase in anxiety or distress. Compulsions are repeated behaviors or mental acts that are done in response to obsessions or in a rigid, rule bound way. Some patients may have only obsessions or only compulsions, but in most cases, both obsessions and compulsions are present. Coming to the epidemiology, OCD has been found to be one of the most prevalent of all psychiatric disorders. Prevalence is around 2.3%. However, subclinical OCD is much more prevalent. OCD has a median age of onset of 19 years, and about one-fourth of the cases have onset by the age of 10 years. Early onset of this disorder is more common in males. In females, onset is often during adolescence, with some developing OCD during pregnancy or puerperium. Onset of this disease after the age of 30 is quite rare. Community studies indicate a higher prevalence of OCD in females, but in clinical context, there are roughly equal numbers of both male and female patients. Male and females have similar symptoms, but males are more likely to have comorbid tics associated along with OCD. Individuals with OCD have an increased family history of this disorder, as well as OCD related disorders, including tic disorders. So there are few peculiar points about OCD observed in clinical and community studies. First one being, OCD is a relatively common disorder in most countries surveyed, and subclinical OCD is even more prevalent. Second, OCD is accompanied by significant comorbidity, which particularly high rates of OCD related disorders of mood and of anxiety disorders. OCD is accompanied by significant morbidity, including impairment in social, academic, and occupational functioning, as well as a reduction in quality of life. Even in high-income countries, there is significant underdiagnosis and undertreatment of OCD. Partly because of this underdiagnosis and undertreatment, OCD is associated with significant economic costs, both for the individual and for the society as a whole. So coming to the etiology and etiopathogenesis of OCD, to some extent, there have over the past few decades, various studies and other research work has given us some idea of this disease. So we'll be discussing about few possible etiologies of this disease. First one is neuroanatomical models of OCD. So there is a hypothesis which says that corticostriatal thalamic cortical pathway plays an important role in mediating the cognitive affective impairments seen in OCD with activation or inhibition of different components of this circuitry driving the compulsive and impulsive features of OC related disorders. Common areas involved include orbitofrontal cortex, head of caudate nucleus, anterior cingulate cortex, and the thalamus. Volumetric studies reveal involvement in the form of decreased volumes of orbitofrontal cortex, anterior cingulate cortex, and basal ganglia, and increased volume of thalamus. PET studies have revealed an increased glucose metabolism in the orbitofrontal cortex and caudate nuclei. Symptom provocation is associated with an increased blood flow in the orbitofrontal cortex, anterior cingulate cortex, caudate, and the thalamus. Treatment studies reveal that lower metabolism is associated with better response to medication in these particular areas. Second is role of neurotransmitters. So there is a serotonin hypothesis of OCD which has been influential. A range of evidence points to the involvement of this system in OCD, and patients respond to treatment with serotonin reuptake inhibitors, but not to treatment with noradrenergic reuptake inhibitors. So once the research, there was a lot of research done regarding this topic, regarding this disease. So after giving patients a trial of medication which cause increased inhibition of reuptake of serotonin, it was found that such patients had improvement. So there was a hypothesis based on this that was given that serotonin is actually helping with the disease. However, whether the loss of serotonin or deficiency of serotonin is causing the disease is unknown. The third is behavioral theory. Compulsions have been described as learned behavior that decreases the anxiety associated with obsessions. This decrease in anxiety positively reinforces the compulsive acts and they become stable learned behavior. Next is genetic factors. Incidence is higher in monozygotic twins as compared to dizygotic twins. So genetic factor has also been found out to be likelihood in this OCD, and it is found that patients who are having monozygotic twins, both twins are usually found to have the same disease, and there is a high suspicion of genetic involvement. However, the exact mechanism is not known, and however, a lot of research is underway. So about 35% of the first degree relatives of OCD patients are affected with the same disease. There is one more possible etiology which has been given, which is post-infectious etiology, especially in cases of early onset of OCD. Post-streptococcal infection has been found to be positive factor in the possible positive factor in the OCD. So, coming to the diagnostic criteria of OCD, this is the DSM-5, which is the latest criteria in which OCD related disorders have been included as a new classification. So, in the following slides, I'll be discussing about, there are 4 points. In the following slides, I'll be discussing about each of these points. So the first is presence of obsessions, compulsions, or both. Under this, obsessions and compulsions have been defined separately. Obsessions are defined by 2 points. First point is recurrent and persistent thoughts, urges or images that are experienced at some point during the disturbance as intrusive and unwanted, and that in most individuals causes marked anxiety or distress. The individual attempts to ignore or suppress such thoughts, urges or images, or to neutralize them with some other thought or action, that is by performing a compulsion. So, most common few examples of obsessions are dirt and contamination obsession, pathological doubt, need for symmetry, superstitious fears, aggressive obsessions, and also sexual obsessions. Coming to compulsions. Compulsions has been defined by 2 points again. The first point being the repetitive behaviors, for example, hand washing, ordering, checking, or mental acts, example, praying, counting, repeating words silently, that the person feels driven to perform in response to an obsession or according to rules that must be applied rigidly. Second is the behavior or mental acts are aimed at preventing or reducing distress or preventing some dreaded event or situation. However, these behaviors or mental acts either are not connected in a realistic way with what they are designed to neutralize or prevent, or are clearly excessive. So, one example of obsession and compulsion would be, for example, if one person might have the thought that his family or family members or himself, there will be a mishap which will happen with them, and he keeps getting that thought again and again. So that becomes an obsession. To get rid of that obsession, the person develops a compulsion. For example, if he feels that if he counts from 1 to 10 5 times a day, uh, if he does that properly and religiously, he feels that that mishap will be diverted. So the second point in the diagnostic criteria for OCD according to DSM-5 is the obsessions or compulsions are time consuming. They usually take more than 1 hour per day, or they cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. Third point, the obsessive compulsive symptoms are not attributable to the direct physiological effects of a substance. For example, a drug of abuse, a medication. Neither they are attributable to another medical condition. The fourth and the last point of the diagnostic criteria The disturbance is not better explained by the symptoms of another mental disorder. So, a few examples of these things will be excessive worries, which you have seen in generalized anxiety disorder, preoccupation with appearance, as in body dysmorphic disorder, difficulty discarding or parting with possessions, as in hoarding disorder, hair pulling, as in hair pulling disorder, skin picking, as in excoriation or skin picking disorder, ritualized eating behavior, as in eating disorder, preoccupation with having an illness, as in illness anxiety disorder, also sexual urges or fantasies, as in paraphilic disorders. So these these things will not come under OCD. Also, one important point which has been described in the DSM-5 classification about OCD is insight. So, insight basically gives us an idea about how much the patient knows about his symptoms. So, we can classify the insight of the after diagnosing the patient with OCD. We can classify whether the patient has good or fair insight. In this situation, the individual recognizes that obsessive compulsive disorders beliefs are definitely or probably not true, or that they may not be true. If he feels that the beliefs are probably true, it is poor insight. Also, if he is convinced that the obsessive compulsive disorder beliefs are true, then it comes under absent insight, or you can call it delusional. Also, as we discussed before, OCD is related, and it's associated with many other comorbid psychiatric conditions, most commonly being depression. Also, other OCD related disorders such as tic disorder can be present along with OCD, anxiety disorders, and personality disorders. So next is checking the severity of OCD. The most accepted method for this is Yale-Brown Obsessive Compulsive Scale. So as you can see in this, this particular scaling system, we can see there is two different tables meant, one for obsession and one for compulsion. So basically, for either of them, we have to see the time spent, interference from the particular obsession or compulsion, distress, resistance, and control over the particular obsession or compulsion. That is the same for similar things for obsession and compulsion. In this scoring, if you get a score of 8 to 15, it is mild OCD. 16 to 23 is moderate OCD. 24 to 31 is severe, and 32 to 40 is extreme OCD. This is a modification of the same scale, which can be given to the patient. Like if a patient is having a literate patient who can follow this, can be given, and the same scale has been translated into how much time the patient can spend. It's been changed to number of hours, and the same numbering goes for this scale as well. And this patient can use it as sometimes as a self-assessment also. However, it may not be very accurate when the patient is doing it as a self-assessment. So next is laboratory investigations and imaging. Presently, there are no biomarkers available for OCD. However, there is some brain imaging such as functional MRI and PET-CT, which may be clinically useful in predicting the response to treatment. But at present, it is not being used as for diagnostic purpose. It is only being used as a research tool. Similarly, while neurogenetic investigations have been valuable in the research context, they do not have sufficient clinical utility for more widespread use. Coming to the differential diagnosis of OCD. So all these disorders can come as a differential diagnosis. So patient can have anxiety due to general medical condition. substance-induced anxiety disorder, body dysmorphic disorder, phobias, then a major depressive episode, generalized anxiety disorder, hypochondriasis, specific phobia, delusional disorder, psychotic disorder, not otherwise specified. Coming to the treatment of OCD. So first and foremost, the most important first step in towards the treatment of OCD is psychoeducation. Psychoeducation is basically explaining the patient about the disease, and also it helps to gain the confidence of the patient and establish a rapport with them. Also, the patient gets educated about the disease. It becomes a big relief to the patient and his or her family after knowing about the disease, like how common the disease is and how easily it can be managed for most of the patients. Also, it reduces the associated embarrassment which the patients are having with this. Second is pharmacotherapy. So the first drug in this we'll discuss about is clomipramine. Clomipramine is a tricyclic antidepressant which is serotonergic. It was the first drug to be approved for treatment of OCD. It is found to be effective in both adults and children. It is more effective than other tricyclic antidepressants due to serotonergic nature. It became the first drug to be used for pharmacotherapy of OCD. Also, the serotonin hypothesis was proposed after the use of this drug, as the serotonergic nature of this drug was thought to be the factor which helped in the treatment of OCD. Next is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. These include citalopram, escitalopram, sertraline, fluoxetine, paroxetine, fluvoxamine. These drugs are equally efficacious as same as clomipramine, but they are also well tolerated by the patients. Presently, these are the first line drugs used for OCD pharmacotherapy. Higher doses required for OCD as compared to depression. These drugs like SSRIs are, if you want to treat patients with OCD, they usually require a higher dose. And also the onset has been, the duration of treatment is longer, and the onset of improvement is also slower as compared to depression. If one SSRI is not helping, then we can also switch over to any of the other drugs. Also, augmentation of these SSRIs can be done with atypical antipsychotics, and a few anti-epileptic drugs can also be used. There is slower response. That's why we should wait ideally for 12 weeks before switching the SSRI, or before starting augmentation. Once response is achieved, the drug should be continued for 1 to 2 years. However, we should be very careful with the withdrawal. As on withdrawal, there is high risk of relapse, and therefore tapering should be done every few months, and the patient should be monitored. Also, MAO inhibitors can be used in patients who are not responding to SSRIs even after augmentation or changing one after changing from one drug to the other. For those patients, like if they are considered refractory to the first line drug, then we can give MAO inhibitors to them, irreversible MAO inhibitors. Most commonly used two drugs are phenylazine and tranylizipramine. Next is psychotherapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy is commonly used for treatment of OCD. The cognitive part, we should deal with like the faulty reasoning which the patient is having. For example, they might think that the thinking that they are having, the thoughts which they get, they are magical thinking. So we have to change the thinking and discuss about the symptoms with them. Next is behavioral. So this is one of the most important interventions which we can do in patients with OCD, which is exposure and response prevention. So exposure and response prevention, or ERP, it is the most widely practiced behavioral therapy for OCD. It has two components: exposure treatment and response prevention treatment. Treatment starts with exposure to situations that cause the least anxiety. As the patient overcomes these, they move on to situations that cause more anxiety. Exposure treatment. This is controlled exposure to the patient, which can be either direct or imagined exposure to objects or situations that trigger obsessions while raising the anxiety level slowly in each session. Over time, the exposure leads to less anxiety, and over a long period of time, it leads to very little anxiety at all. Response prevention treatment. This aims at ritual behaviors that people with OCD engage in to reduce the anxiety. Patients learn to resist the compulsion to perform rituals and are eventually able to stop engaging in these behaviors. Also, there are few surgical treatments which have been proposed for OCD. However, they are not usually practiced. One of them is deep brain stimulation. Then other surgical procedures like cingulotomy, subchordate tracheotomy, limbic leucotomy, and capsulotomy. To summarize, OCD is a very common, highly prevalent psychiatric disorder, often underdiagnosed. Forms new chapters in DSM-5 and ICD classifications. And etiology is having neuroanatomical etiologies are there, neurotransmitters, behavioral, and genetic factors. According to DSM-5 definition, OCD comprises of obsessions, compulsions, or both, which are time-consuming, cannot be explained by any organic cause, nor by another psychiatric disorder, with or without insight of symptoms. They are often associated with other comorbid psychiatric illnesses. Treatment includes psychoeducation, pharmacotherapy, and psychotherapy. These are the references which I use.